Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all here tonight at the dinner called Accelerating and Scaling Nature Positive Solutions. I'm standing here on behalf of Andre, the president of Innovate for Nature, and also, you know, all his other roles. Unfortunately, he had to go to a dinner. He was invited short notice to a dinner with head of states and Klaus Schwab, so he's excused. He might join us a little bit later. So I'm stepping into his role tonight to welcome you and also start with some introductory remarks, which I actually wrote for Andre, but I'm sure he would have said something totally different. So I'll stick to my notes, so bear with me. So it's a really great pleasure to seeing you all here. And, you know, we were really amazed about the number of participants that signed up to our dinner tonight. We had originally the other room, the small room, for 60 people. So we thought it will be a cozy evening, that similar like we had last year. But then we had over 200 participants on the waiting list. So that's why Stephanie and also Adeline, they were able to play magic so that we could get this big room. So I'm really pleased to have you all here tonight. So let me start with a few introductory remarks. I think we live in a world with over 110 armed conflicts. And the looming risk of inflation, but also all the uncertainty that we're living in the world today. And we are, all this uncertainty, I then thought about, well, what does that mean for nature? Will nature still be and have a place at the table, or will it suddenly disappear? And I looked at the latest World Economic Risk Report. And I mean, nature and climate are still as important risk in the next 10 years. But their importance has slightly decreased, in my view, for the next 2 years. So we're competing with economic, geopolitical, societal, but also technological risks. So what we want to do, and to ensure that we can keep this place at the table, we are focusing tonight on nature, and actually on how can we scale nature-positive solutions? What can we do to really act and increase nature-positive activities? And I think it's really important, and that's also the focus that we will have tonight. It's on one side, we know we all depend on nature. We breathe the air, we eat the food, and that's all coming from nature, right? So we are so dependent on it. So we need to do something. And I think all actors must play their part. And I think also the business sector really has to play their part. They have to transform their business models towards a just but also nature-positive future. And that's what we want to highlight tonight as well when we go through the whole evening. And I hope we get lots of insights also from all of you. We want this to be also an interactive evening, so there will be clearly some presentations, there will be also some panel discussions, but we want to involve you as well. So what is great about all this is actually, it's not just a discussion about scaling and accelerating nature-positive solutions, but tonight we also want to launch the Innovate for Nature Foundation. And I will tell you more about it because it's a shift from a marketplace to an accelerator. But I'll tell you more about it just in a few seconds. But I think what I want to say is, for me, what is key, we need all actors in order to achieve such a just and nature-positive future. So what I'd like to do now is, before we start and before I introduce our first keynote speaker, I'd like to know who is in the room, and probably you want to know as well who is in the room. So what we prepared, so in order to make this also a little bit interactive, we prepared a QR code, and we'd like to know which sector first do you represent. I hope you can see all this QR code. Otherwise, you can also go onto the Slido website and put the hashtag 2053398 into it, and then indicate which sector you represent, so that we know who is here tonight and that you also see a little bit. I think we have a nice mixture, but I've seen the list of participants, but you haven't. So maybe we can, yes, see who is here tonight. Okay, so we have a lot of private sector representatives, which is great. We have a lot of investors, we have some foundations, some NGOs, some family businesses, family offices, some scientific representatives, and some others. And government, I don't know whether we have any government representatives. I can't see it on this slide. But maybe who clicked other? If you clicked other, can you tell me from which sector you are? Anybody clicked other, I assume? Silvio?
International organization?
Yes, international organizations. Any others? No. Okay. And the ones that are coming in, there are still some free seats here up front. So come and join us. Okay. Then we have, yes? We have a second question. The second questions, can we see the second question maybe again, which was actually, yes. What are, in your view, the biggest challenges to accelerate and scale nature-positive solutions? So we'd like to know what you think are the biggest challenges in order to do so. And then we'll come back also to this question during the panel discussion, but also certainly also during the roundtable discussions. Interesting. So let's keep that in mind also for our panel discussion. The majority thinks the biggest solutions are policy and regulatory frameworks, so that we need more policy, more regulation in order to scale and accelerate nature-positive solutions. The second one, lack of awareness. And the third one, also limited availability of investable solutions, which is something that speaks to my heart, because that's something we want to overcome as well with Innovate for Nature. And then also certainly resource limitations, but that's just a small minority, and then others. Great. Let's keep that in mind also for our discussions later on. Thank you for that. And then I'd like to introduce our first keynote speaker. Can I have the slide again, please? Okay. Thank you. So we'll start with a short keynote speech from Piet Masserly. Piet Masserly, he's the director of the WEF Academy for Nature, and he's also a professor at the University of Bern. And he has actually, recently, I've seen that, Piet, you have been appointed as one of the International Science Council's 100 new fellows. And that's a very nice recognition. And I think we look forward to hearing from you a little bit also about how can we foster also synergies between human well-being, biodiversity protection, sustainable land use, but also climate resilient communities. And that's something that you're pursuing with the WEF Academy for Nature. So I'd like to ask you now to come on stage and share with us your kind of key points and framing really the topic for tonight's evening. Piet, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's very kind, and of course these prizes show that I'm getting older. Nevertheless, I was really happy to be invited to this launching event of Innovate for Nature, and I was specifically intrigued by the question, how can we accelerate and scale nature-positive solutions as a guiding question, and I promise that I will land on 3 ideas from my side in terms of my conclusions. But before that, I would like to explore together with you 3 perhaps more general questions. And the first is a little bit, what is exactly the urgency or the emergency that we are facing? The second is, what can we learn from other ambitious and transformational agendas that we have had in the past years. And the third, what's this innovation space? What is the innovation that we need for also nature-positive solutions? Good. And I didn't bring any PowerPoint, but I brought 4 props that will take me through the evening. And I start with this hourglass, the sand glass, to talk about the first issue about the emergency and the urgency. What is it? And of course, you would expect me as a scientist to tell you about the climate pathways of 2 to 3 degrees that we are on, tell you about the extinction rates of 1/4 to 1/8, and of course the general loss of nature, with 2/3 of all mammals that we already have lost, and forests the size of Switzerland being lost every year. And of course we could talk about tipping points, and you will listen to the urgency. But I don't want to do that. I perhaps want to frame it in a second way and say, in 2000, the General Secretary of the UN was here, and he talked to the people at the WEF and said, it's not the planet will cease to exist. It's us, the people, who will cease to exist. And he was telling that to us, the 1% richest people in the world, who we know in 2019, polluted so much carbon pollution as the poorest 2/3 of humanity. So he was framing it as a humanitarian crisis with an issue of existential fears, but also with inequalities which tear about the social contract on this planet. And I think we are seeing crisis on that as well. And perhaps the third level of framing of the crisis, which is dear to me as a scientist, our inability to act. We know so much and we do so little. This gap between knowing and doing is growing. And many of us, if we are very honest, we can imagine these days the crisis better than the change of the systems which are really creating those crises. And of course, in times of crisis, we are remembering also what Milton Friedman said. He says, only crises bring real change, and when they occur, the actions will depend on the ideas that lay around. And that brings me to the second point. The ideas that they lay around these days, of course, it is the Agenda 2030, and it is the global biodiversity framework and this overarching goal of nature positivity. And I know you're all familiar with it, but I think we can learn something from nature positive solutions. And if I would say I have 17 New Year's resolutions, you would laugh at me. And if I would say these 17 New Year's resolutions are highly interconnected, like the SDGs, then it reminds me of this cube, the Rubik cube that we used in our youth. And we try to find a solution and turn things. And each time you turn, you have unintended effects on the other sides. And that's the SDGs. If I take my favorite SDG and try to tick it, I'll have incredible other actions. For example, if I say, let's reduce hunger and just increase food production, I'll do a lot of good things. I'll take people out of poverty, I do something for their health, and so on. I will create income, but I have a lot of trade-offs. For example, if I just increase agricultural production, I would use 50% more agricultural land. I would produce 90% more CO2. So what can we learn out of that insights? These goals, if I just head-on try to tick them off, I'm dealing with symptoms, and I'm not understanding the unexpected trade-offs. So SDGs, or these goals, are not a strategy. They are a good dashboard of what we want to achieve, but they don't help us to solve the problem. And so how can we solve these problems? I think it's clear we have to change the whole cube. It's about systems transformation. And we can only do that if we know what we want to achieve on the different sizes, the colors on the sides. And from science and in the work we did, it's quite clear what are the outcomes, what we need to change. One is, of course, we need a regenerative economy. It must be achieved. We also need the energy transition as a system. We need sustainable food systems, and we have to build resilient cities and infrastructure. And on the sides, we have to think, how do we manage global environmental commons, and how do we imagine a good life and human well-being in the future? These are the 6 overarching transitions that we have to think of. And the last point, what we can learn, is about knowledge. I'm a scientist. Trial and error, it's not a good advice. You need to think, and you have knowledge and strategy. But again, complexity is too high. There is not the master plan that will say everything. So you always have to say, I don't know exactly, I have to learn and I have to adapt along the way. That's important also when we have these big aspirations in terms of change. How to do it? What's the innovation? How can we change these things? And what's the innovative potentials? And my next prop is this one. It's a cogwheel. Took it almost from my bike. And basically, sometimes we think the world is so complex, but I think it's also a bit simple. We have 4 cogwheels to change the world or to achieve those systems. One, of course, is business and finance, an important cogwheel. A second cogwheel is, of course, governance in the public sector. We need rules and institutions. The third, I would say, is science and technology. And the fourth is behavior and capacities of the people. These 4 cogwheels, we can use them to create change. And so far, now speaking at the WEF Academy for Nature and our experience, where do we see the innovative, really innovative potentials of what to do? The first thing is, of course, sometimes we have really sexy cogwheels and we are fascinated, but what important thing to learn is the purpose must be the right one. We still confuse means and ends. Of course, business of business is business, but perhaps the business of business is this systemic change. And you're not the only ones. Tell a scientist that he is not an end in itself, but a means to a bigger end. You'll have a lot of fights in academia, I tell you. So we're still a long way to go to explain that the purpose must be central business of these cogwheels. The second lesson that I learned is, we dream of cogwheels and sometimes we see those beautiful magic bullets and we hope it will change everything. But frankly, I'm very skeptical. The biggest potential for innovation that I see is to build cogwheels into clockworks, to work on different cogwheels. For example, in the Amazon, we have a new product, a value chain for a forest product of Amazon nut. That's a great innovative value chain, but it will only work if the farmers have the knowledge and the behavior to produce what they're supposed to produce, and they will only do that if they have the access to the land and the governance is correct. So you see, you always need the different cogwheels together, and I think we nearly should be more constructing clockworks than inventing and waiting for new cogwheels. That's a big lesson learned for me. The third lesson learned, define what you want to impact. What is your impact? Be clear what you want to achieve, and not in terms of the cogwheel, but in terms of the systemic change, the food system, the regenerative economy. Define that very clearly, and use the science cogwheel to define the target, to monitor it, to evaluate and learn from it. Science has a role to play in this clockwork of change to be really credible. And my final remark on that is, not everything counts what you can count. And not everything that you can count also counts. If we want to be nature positive and we have to manage global environmental commons or the social and cultural values of nature, we have to move beyond a pure metrics of economic price schemes, etc. So we have to innovate on that side as well. Good, and with that I would like to conclude on my last question, or on the guiding question, how can we scale and accelerate nature positive solutions? For me, acceleration is absolutely key. And many of you are in private business. I don't need to tell you what acceleration is. It's interest rates, it's exponential growth. And that can only happen if we have positive feedback loops. So we need to construct positive feedback loops in the systems, which are the key to change, to accelerate the change. So I would say a nature positive solution will never accelerate if this solution is not also positive for the human beings. So co-benefits between nature and human are existential to accelerate change. The second thing, you said how to scale. Yes, scaling is possible, especially these cogwheels. You can produce 50 cogwheels and distribute them on the world. That's good and important. But be aware, the clockwork is more difficult to scale because how you combine these cogwheels depends on the context. If I want to change the food system in Switzerland, it's different how I build these interconnections from Kenya. If I change the Kenyan food system, I need to work with different combinations of cogwheels. So it is context specific, and I'm really saying if you want to go to scale, then choose champions in these contexts, work with partners, build capacities that you cannot do it alone, you have to be contextualized. And finally, of course, it's about funding, and I'm not the expert, but from our experience, I can just say, don't fake it until you make it. We don't need more greenwashing examples. Come up with a very credible story, how you have impact, which is systemic, and you can measure it and prove it. And then I think the funding is not a problem. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Pete, really for your insights and for setting the scene. I think what is really critical, what you're saying is find solutions that work also in the different contexts. And you have different hubs that you're doing this also with the WEF Academy for Nature. So I think that's really critical, but also I think what you're highlighting is also the need for all the different actors to play together and really kind of see how they are complementary, right? So that it works like a clock, and we will be hearing about how clocks work later on today. Yes. So thank you very much one more time. So with this, I want to switch to the panel discussion, and I'd like to ask my dear panelists. I know some of you are still trying to eat the first course, but I hope you still join me on the floor, and I'll start with introducing, first of all, Gina Domanic. She's a dear friend of mine. I've known her quite a long time already, and she's the CEO and managing partner of Emerald Ventures. So she founded Emerald Ventures already 24 years ago, and it's really as one of the first independent clean tech venture capital funds in Europe. And tonight we want to learn from what you have achieved and how can we transform maybe some of your experiences and expertise also into the area of nature. Please come on and join me here. Then I hope I spell your name right. Nolaik, I think, I'm not sure. Bear with me, Forrest. She's the Chief Sustainability Officer at Holcim, and you have just been appointed recently as Chief Sustainability Officer. So it's a great pleasure to really welcome you here tonight, specifically because I have to disclose I know Holcim quite well because I used to work for the company back 13 years ago. So it's really great to hear also what the company has achieved. And before being appointed as Chief Sustainability Officer, and I'd like to highlight, I think what is really important at Holcim, the Chief Sustainability Officer sits at the Executive Committee. And for me, that's really the right place for Chief Sustainability Officers to sit, because then you can really be part of the discussion and the decision making. So really looking forward to your input. With that, I'd like to continue and introduce Eva Zabay. Most of you will know Eva. Eva is the CEO of Business for Nature, and she has been part of the InTent and SDG Tent for several years already. So it's great to have you up here with us. And then last but not least, Simon, do you want to join us as well on the table, on the panel? So Simon, we go back many years, right, Simon?
Sure.
Yeah, so we did a road trip in Australia, some 23 years. No, not that many.
Let's move swiftly on.
No, yeah. A few years ago. And so Simon is now the co-CEO of Nature Finance. And I think, as we heard, finance is very critical, business is critical for the discussion, and also the financial sector. So that's why we have this panel discussion. So I hope now I can switch to this microphone, and I'll come over here, so that's more cozy. So, Simon, do you mind, Simon, do you mind shifting a little bit so I can see you as well? Maybe, we have a small circle. I think that's nicer. What I'd like to start with is really also how can we reverse some of the negative financial flows that go into nature? Some of you may have seen, and I know many have liked it as well on LinkedIn, UNEP recently just published a study where it said that over almost $7 trillion per year are negative financial flows that go into nature. And they come from governments, but also from the business sector, which is quite big. And I actually want to start with you, Simon. And I want to ask you at Nature Finance, what are you doing to reverse these financial flows so that, the negative financial flows that go into nature become positive or have a positive impact at the end for nature?
Thanks very much indeed. I'm very pleased to be here. So I'm not going to talk so much about what we're doing, but what some of you are doing. And I don't think now is time for grand theory, but quite practical stuff. So, if we go through a bit of a stack, not complete, but at least illustrative, we need to get the data right. We've got Tom Crowther over there, SEED, Crowther Lab, Biodiversity Complexity Index, many others working on data. And we've got to nail this down, and we've got to stop scientists bickering with each other and figure out a common approach to measuring the state of nature. Otherwise, the rest of the stack, frankly, just doesn't work. We have to get the strategic plumbing in place. We have Tony Goldner somewhere here, TNFD. Tony, give a wave. And some of you will have noted the launch of the early adopters framework and community today, just a few hours ago. Huge progress being made. And much as I love TNFD, that's not enough. That's just a piece of the story. So we need to figure out how to switch the opportunity side of the story on. So we got here, for example, the land banking group team. How do we get from the science, through the legal hoops, the accounting hoops, and get nature onto balance sheets in effective ways? Land banking group leading the way in that. Others also involved in this area. And we can go up. We need to start looking at financial innovation. The work in sovereign debt markets to land where nature sits in sovereign risk, and where nature sits in pricing sovereign debt turns out to be a hugely important piece, not just in sovereign debt markets because of the way in which sovereign credit ratings influence many investment flows around the world. And we can keep going up, and I'll just add a couple and then pass it back to you, Barbara, because it gets up into the governance space, which is what we heard a little bit about that we also need to be focusing on. Nature crimes, $280 billion a year, third largest source of illicit financial crimes, and a multiple of, say, 5 or 10 of the impact of nature crimes on negative nature externalities, however we choose to measure that. We know that nature crimes is being picked up by the financial community, but we lack any sort of way in which the financial community can look down its financing value chain, identify nature crimes or identify the lack of nature crimes to ensure that it isn't unintentionally complicit in giving economic oxygen to nature crimes that cause such damage around the world and lead to not just criminal activity, human trafficking, drugs, and many other real huge problems, but also obviously the destruction of nature. And let's go way up to the stack a little bit higher, and then I'll give it a pause, which is central banks, financial regulators. Huge success since 2016. We have 120 central banks and financial regulators, not just looking at climate risk now, but beginning to look at nature risks. The network for central banks, greening the financial system, some of you will know, is where that sort of club now sits. But hold on a second. They're actually only looking at nature and climate risk through a financial stability lens or through a higher level supervisory and prudential lens. They have no mandate to ensure that financial institutions today simply desist from investing in certain areas and encouraging them to invest in other areas. So maybe that's another area where we will not just be able to collect together those that govern the financial community, but begin to shift the way in which their mandates are applied to nature and climate. So not the whole stack, but I think one can begin to see the layers and begin to tease the way these layers connect to each other, and in the end can begin to erode significantly and at scale those negative nature externalities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'd like to turn to you, because I mean, of this $7 trillion, $5 trillion are really from the private sector. So what can the private sector do to reverse these negative financial flows into nature? What are you suggesting also at Business for Nature?
Thanks so much, Barbara. Hi, everyone. Well, you won't be surprised for me to then start with the high-level actions that all companies can take: assess, commit, transform, disclose. But maybe I just want to take a little step back, and listening also to Pete and other conversations this week. I'm not sure how many you've had. But we can do whatever we want as a community to try and encourage, nudge, reward companies in the best way that we can to be taking the right actions. The reality is that we're not going to be able to encourage a systems change, and we are all part of this accountability system. So it's one of those situations where I feel quite strongly we don't have time to play the blame game. And someone wise once said, don't be annoyed you're in a traffic jam, you are the traffic jam. And it makes me think of this situation, which is that we can all point fingers and say, oh, actually, it's business, but then look into how businesses make decisions. It's all about the financial, and the reality is all of the actors along that accountability system. We know the actions that companies can take, and we've even gone down to sector level convergence, and that's one of the things as a coalition that's super important to us, is to unify and converge and simplify what are the key actions so that companies who are new to this area can just leapfrog over spending. We cannot have companies spend 5 years doing a materiality assessment, using up all of the resources that they have dedicated and not have any left to take the action. And the actions are really quite straightforward. It is a good thing to restore degraded ecosystems. It's a good thing to avoid or reduce the use of hazardous chemicals. It's a good thing to manage your freshwater resources. Those are all really straightforward things that across your value chain companies can already be taking now. So how are we going to... There are two things I just want to add more concretely that companies can focus on now. It's that overall plan, which is, for companies, a strategy. Companies need to have a strategy for how they are going to contribute to a nature-positive world. Nature-positive is a societal goal to halt and reverse nature loss by 2030. So as a company across your value chain, you need to know what is our contribution going to be and how are we going to get there. We've launched a major campaign, a joint campaign called It's Now for Nature, nowfornature.org. And it's going to last until 2030. We've got a nature strategy handbook available in multiple languages. So we really would love to see as many companies of all sizes, sectors, from all geographies, develop a strategy. It doesn't have to be standalone, even better if it's part of your climate or broader sustainability strategy. Publish it, and then submit it to nowfornature.org. And over time, what we want to see is an exponential increase in the number of companies with strategies. And that will be our contribution as countries develop their own national biodiversity strategies and action plans. So the next big milestone is COP16 in Colombia in October. We hope to see so many of you there. And in terms of the systems change, just really quickly on the policy, I just want to flag that we also collectively need to have clarity on our priority policy asks. Of course, there are going to be specific ones in specific countries and specific sectors, but headline, the reason we were all collectively so successful at COP15 in the CBD was because we were super sharp on what we were asking governments to do. We've now got the Global Biodiversity Framework, So you can all now contribute to a consultation on policy asks to inform what the next priority asks are going to be for us collectively to push this agenda. And in turn, that will drive the business action at scale and speed.
Thank you very much, Eva, for that. I mean, I think it's really important, to help companies so that they can start on their biodiversity journey. But I think sometimes it's also overwhelming for them because there are so many different, Simon alluded to TNFD, SBTN, and then your criteria that you have, WBCSD, WEF, everyone is publishing. It's helpful, but I think I sometimes also see companies, they are just overwhelmed and have no idea where to start.
It's because fair enough, it is newer for companies.
Yeah.
But what are we comparing that to? Can we compare it, please, to the financial management accounting system? And how many articles and new reports and acronyms do exist for that? So at some point, we're trying to account for natural and social systems, which are way more complicated than the man-made system that we made for financial accounting, and yet we think it should be easier. So I also think there's a resource and understanding issue here that we should just talk about straight up.
So let's dive into an example of Holcim. I mean, as a building materials company, you're dependent on nature, but you have a clear biodiversity strategy. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure, and Barbara, it's a pleasure to be pursuing your legacy from when you were back at Holcim in the day. As basically at Holcim, we've got such a strong link to nature that we take our responsibility very seriously. We've been working on this for quite a while now. We started our first partnership with IUCN more than 18 years ago to create our biodiversity indicator reporting system, to take a transformative rehabilitation approach to our operations, which means that in all of our quarries, and we have 800 quarries around the world, we're going to do a biodiversity baseline so that every year we analyze the biodiversity level of our quarries to make sure that over the years we restore and regenerate the quarry to make it biodiversity positive. And as we do that, we really are pursuing a vision to be a regenerative business in how we conduct our operations. So my advice here is try to find a tool that is measurable and simple to operationalize across your business, because then you can actually make it happen and you can start generating data. And once you have data in the system, you can start improving year over year. And we get our teams really to compete on this because we measure this at the very highest level. So yeah, that's the beginning of the journey. We also take a first movers approach. So we're delighted to have been part of developing the TNFD disclosure framework for our sector. We're going to be disclosing our results in our annual report this year. We are also one of 17 companies to be piloting the first science-based targets for nature. And we hope that by doing all of this, we're going to start opening up new ways for businesses to make this easier for others to follow this trajectory. But the most exciting part of this for us as a building materials company is that it's the nature-friendly solutions that we're bringing into cities. Because the more nature we bring into cities, the more we're actually making cities resilient. More nature in cities helps you reduce urban heat island effects, so you reduce urban temperature. You also improve air quality. You also improve water management. When there's severe downpours, you need to have functional landscapes to serve as ponds to manage the water flows in the city. So we're in our journey working with cities to build sustainable solutions. We're very driven by making nature-based solutions happen. We were part of the first vertical forest in 2011 in Milan. And so the more nature we can bring into cities, the more we make them resilient. And I think that's a great source of inspiration for us.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So we heard about all the trillions that are negative nature investments, and there are some 200 billion per year that goes towards nature positive solutions or nature-based solutions. Now the question to you, Gina, is how can we scale that, or how can we make sure that there are more investments going into nature-positive, nature-based solutions? And what can we learn from kind of the clean tech area that you're working in?
Sure. So as you mentioned, I started out 23, 24 years ago, and we went through a real learning curve, lost a lot of money in the process, which I hope that other people don't have to repeat that experience. But I think that we as a sector started out quite naively back then, thinking that the thing that was missing was the innovation, and we just need to find the innovation, and the innovation will save the planet, we used to say. Now we don't say that anymore. We say save humanity, because the planet will still be here. but we really said back then, what's missing is the innovation. And what we learned over the years was we would find the innovation, we would give those companies capital, and they would die on the vine because the market demand wasn't there. And just because, I used to say we can't will the market to adopt these technologies, right? These are industrial technology. These are long existing sectors with incumbents who have other needs and demands. And so that's what we realized in the end. You need innovation. You need great entrepreneurs. You need capital. A lot of people complain, there's not enough capital. We say there's capital. The problem is you need market demand. You need real, people who say, I will adopt this solution. If we meet a startup and they say, look, we've got all these pipeline of customers lined up to adopt our solution, we are interested, and we will probably invest in those companies. They will get the money, right? So going back then, if we have identified the problem as being market demand, what actually makes that market demand? And again, I'm talking about the industrial sector, right? Energy, water, materials, even food and ag on the B2B side. And what we've realized is, it comes down to either consumers demand more sustainable, so like the plastics packaging problem, that's a perfect example, where now the value chain is getting concerned that the consumers are going to move against them if they don't get more sustainable packaging. Regulation is really, really high up there, right? And it's not just just any regulation that's actually going to get not just passed, but actually enforced. And right? PFAS is a super example of that.
And good that you're mentioning regulation. And sorry if I'm interrupting you, but I think this is really interesting because a recent study also showed that why did people invest in PV and solar panels in Germany mainly? It's really because of the regulation, because the investors knew that there are lots of subsidies and this is a market that will exist for several years.
And that's the third
point.
Probably
that's why everyone was saying we need the regulatory frameworks and all this. Yeah.
And then the shareholders will actually demand companies act in a certain way. And then, yes, the board of directors get a little bit concerned when they think their job is on the line, right? So then you'll see real change. And we need, and I don't want to bash the corporates because there's been an incredible increase in corporate climate commitments in the past 3 years. It's phenomenal compared to what we saw 20, 25 years ago, right? But that's what we need. We need the corporates to get on board. We need them to demand the solutions. We will find the solutions. Academia will come up with the innovations, and the money will be there.
Great. Simon, you want to follow up on this? You want to say something? It works.
Yeah, I thought I'd pick up on the policy and regulatory side just kind of briefly. I think we've heard, there is that slow burn learning curve that we need to push and support as much as we can in individual companies. There are the developments in the way in which the financial market sees and prices opportunities, data needs and so on, as we were talking about at the table a little bit earlier. And then there are sort of a few larger elephants in the room, which are worthwhile kind of calling out. And I'm not sure whether we're the right people to address them, but they're true. The world's largest market interface with nature are $4 trillion soft commodity markets. They're under-regulated. They're completely opaque. They're dominated by 6 companies that aren't listed. So we don't have a lot of information about them. The regulators that do exist take no account of nature, no account of climate, no account of equity outcomes. So it's a desperately under-regulated area. And those commodity markets sit in our midst. If you ask a company like Nestle, what are your challenges in really ensuring sustainable production in your global supply chain? Number one will be dealing with commodity markets. Kind of how do we really get the information we need buy the product we want, shape the outcomes on the ground? The answer is we don't. We have to go round commodity markets and do direct purchasing in order to do that. And actually, you can't do that with 100% of production. You need to change the way commodity markets work. This is just a huge elephant in the room. Or second one, we have 62 elections, 64 elections this year. We've already had 2 billion people. By the end of this year, we may be facing a very different set of political views about the way in which nature and climate should progress through our policy and regulatory environment. The EU is a really important case in point. We see at the moment the EU as a major exporter of nature-positive regulations in different ways. We can be debating whether they're good policies or bad policies, but where the Brussels elections go this year will have a huge effect on this agenda. So
absolutely. Yeah.
I guess I feel we need to focus on the detail. We need to do the convening. We need to get that finance moving. But collectively, we can't walk away from those larger agendas, and we have to think about what that means for us as a community.
Exactly. And I think, that's a very good point. And I guess here, Business for Nature comes in as well, right? You're also playing a role to make sure that nature is still at the table. And I'm just looking at our watch. So, Eva, continue.
Yeah.
And then
actually, I was just going to continue on from what Simon was saying, in that for all of those of us who are privileged enough to be able to vote, this is an important year. And because we can say, we've got to change the regulation, but who decides that? Sure, there are lobby groups. We need to have positive lobbying for more ambitious policies by business and finance, of course. But it's also up to each and every one of us who can be able to vote to do so in the right way and to stick to, maybe just as it's my final comment, I just want to just say something that's very personal to me that I don't know whether all of you feel, but there's so much polarization in the world right now. It is so easy, and we are encouraged to take extreme sides. And it's the same in the environment and social agenda as it is with the conflicts and the suffering that's taking place around the world today. I would love for all of us to think about, when we are sharing and contributing to these discussions, are we doing it in as constructive and as sensitive a way as possible? Because currently, with the year ahead and with what's going on, we're faced with a bit of an existential crisis of, so what's the mission for humanity again? And I'm bringing it way up, but I think that then will help us land on our priorities as individuals and organizations moving forward.
Yes, and I think it's very important, right? We need the right regulatory frameworks, and then we need actions by all the different actors. And Noik, maybe just to understand as well, you have signed another partnership with IUCN in order to also work on nature-positive solutions. Can you tell us more about it? What is what are you aiming at with this partnership, and what? Yeah.
I think the complexity of taking action on nature is that it is complex, right? So for us, the way we manage that is we worked with IUCN to develop this biodiversity indicator system that got us on a route to measure something tangible across our business. So right now we're expanding that partnership because their experts come and they do all the baselines in our operations, and they also do capacity building for us. But they also help us with their whole network of government partners to also introduce in the building norms more nature-friendly standards so that we can bring more nature into cities. So having a partner like IUCN really helps us because they bring their unique expertise that gets us on the right trajectory. If you look at the big scheme of things, 85% of multinationals have climate targets, 25% have water targets, and only 5% have nature targets. So it just shows how complex this is. So trying to find a partner that can help you decomplexify this and find a simple metric that you can actually operationalize across your business, I think is a first step forward. We certainly have done that, and it really has worked for us. So I can only encourage you to think along those lines. And thanks to IUCN, we're able to get better and better every year.
Great. Thank you very much. Gina, any recommendations, any thoughts from this discussion that, you say, yes, this is something, I want to recommend to startups. We have some startups in the room, but also companies or investors or others.
Yeah, I think if I could ask for one thing, it's that, and it was kind of alluded to, is that each individual has an ability to make a difference here on the demand side, right? Everybody is a consumer. Everybody, well, not everybody can vote, but those who vote should be voting, thinking about the regulation that we need, the policy that we need to have in place. And I think the one area where people tend to distance themselves, and it's a little bit, I think, unfortunate, is when you talk about shareholder demands, right? You have to think that 40% of companies are owned by pension funds. That's our money, right? So we should be actually having a say there. If the pension fund, so if institutional investors started to have these demands on the companies that they're investing in, things would happen. Things would move, right? So I would say it's to the consumer, it's the regulation, but it's the pension funds or institutional investors putting their clear demands on the companies of how they want them to be operated. That's what I would wish for.
Great. And any other final comments, or is that good? Because I think one of my key takeaways now from this discussion is clearly the different actors have to work together. We have heard from Pete, it's also very interconnected, but I think we all individually can do something, either how we invest our pension monies, that we look, okay, maybe we can't do something, but we can then ask our companies to maybe change the pension fund, or then also to say, okay, whom do we vote, right, for? So this is one of the key takeaways. I want to thank you very much for this discussion. A big applause to all of you. Thank you very much. It goes so fast. I know I have to interrupt you again. Can I get your attention, please, again? So now you're enjoying your dinner, and I'm interrupting you again. So I hope you bear with me. What I'd like to do is now really use also the discussion, and you will have some more time for discussions around the table in a few minutes. What I'd like to do, take the occasion and also introduce to you Innovate for Nature. As I mentioned, tonight is really the launch of the Innovate for Nature Accelerator, which will be a foundation. We're in the process of establishing the foundation. And I want to give you some highlights or some backgrounds. We initiated Innovate for Nature for organizations together about 1.5 years ago. And initially, we also conducted 3 marketplaces. And what we realized after the 3rd marketplace, it's not so easy actually to put investors and nature positive or nature solutions together, because very often these nature solutions are early startups and maybe not yet investable. So that brought us then to the reflection, and we had end of last year really reflecting about, so what will be the future mission and the future purpose of Innovate for Nature? And we came to the conclusion that we want to become an accelerator. We want to help some of the startups that we have looked into, that we got to know, and that are very dear to our heart. We want to help them to connect with the private sector, to connect with investors, or maybe to connect them just with the ecosystem that we have in order for them to scale and maybe also to accelerate. So that's why I'm really pleased that we can use this evening now, that we have the occasion to launch this with all of you. And I'd like to share with you what's our purpose. Our purpose is really that by 2030, we will have accelerated at least 100 high-quality, top-tier, nature-positive solutions. And I really want to highlight on the high quality and top tier. We will have a process of selecting the best nature positive solutions and really connecting them also with our ecosystem and maybe also all of you in this room and also some other partners. And I'll go into the mission just now. What are our core activities? We actually have 3 core activities. And I'll start with the one on top, which is the portfolio building. What we want to do with Innovate for Nature is really build a portfolio of high-quality solutions. And we will do this by giving out the Innovate for Nature Award. So we will be selecting solutions that can apply via Innovate for Nature, and we will be screening them. And then we will have a jury. Some members are in this room and have accepted to be part of the Innovate for Nature jury. And we will then select really the top solutions. And they will get an award. Some of them will also get mentoring, coaching, in order for them really to scale their solutions. And we are also looking for some network and also strategic partners that want to be part of our journey and really join us in this endeavor. Sorry, I wanted to go back. So we want to build an ecosystem with the different actors that we were mentioning just before. So it's an ecosystem of startups, an ecosystem of business partners, but also an ecosystem of investors, but also other network partners who can help us really scale and accelerate these nature-positive solutions. We also want to build thought leadership in the space and really share with you, for example, a nature solution digest, or really highlighting what are some of the great solutions, what are some of their challenges that they are facing, or maybe how have they overcome these challenges. So this is what we want to do, and through the thought leadership, clearly also giving some air to the different nature-positive solutions. The 4 areas are still the same areas that we want to focus on. One is mainstreaming forest or sustainable management of ecosystems, so really focusing on ecosystems, but then also Noyek, you were mentioning cities, infrastructure. How can we use nature as infrastructure? I think we have lots of opportunities there. Clearly, regenerative agriculture, that's an important topic, but also we are looking also for interesting circular solutions, and we will hear about some of them just later. Because what we want to do, and I want to hand over now to my colleague, Philipp Staudacher. He's our head of portfolio at Innovate for Nature, and he will be actually screening the different nature positive solutions. He just joined us this January, and we're really happy to have him on board. So I'm handing over to Philipp now that he can tell you a little bit more, because we will look into some of these solutions. Philipp, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Barbara. But this evening is really not about me, but it is more about the solutions, so the ones that we want to present to you. So as she mentioned, I will be looking for startups. I will also be assessing them, which startups have the highest biodiversity positive potential or nature positive potential. And tonight we're going to showcase to you 4 such solutions. On the left, we have 2 that are focusing more on ecosystem mainstreaming. You will learn what that is about. And on the right, we have more something that's a bit closer to us humans, the circular economy solutions. And so I would already like to invite the first speaker up on stage. And that is Anja Rundqvist from Invest Conservation. And they are focusing on high-value conservation projects.
Thank you so much, Philippe, and thank you, Barbara, and the whole Innovate for Nature team. It's fantastic to be with you all tonight. So we're gonna get some slides up. We are Invest Conservation. We make biodiversity conservation investable. So how do we do that? Well, that's what we're here to talk about. And first of all, we focus on biodiversity conservation in tropical forest. With the people in the room here, you all know the importance of this, but just recapping the impact on climate mitigation from tropical forest. The emission coming out, the carbon emission coming out on the deforestation taking place every year is larger than the emissions of Europe all combined. So if we can direct money to halt deforestation, don't know what happened there, but we'll probably get back up in a second on the slides. Just going to see if we can get the slides up there again. But meanwhile there, if we can halt deforestation, we really have a big climate impact. But climate and biodiversity are interlinked. They're not separate. We're here to talk about nature, and what we are focusing on is biodiversity protection. So as you can see on the map here, we focus on projects where you have the most threatened species. That's where we go in, tropical forest with biodiversity protection. And we have projects today live in Ecuador already. We work in Borneo, Sumatra in Indonesia, Philippines, and we're expanding from that as well. So today with us as well that I want to highlight, we will get into more as well. We have John Rogers sitting down here, who's our founder, hands up, and we also have Andres down there, who's our CMO. So we will have the whole team here there for some of the sessions that. But if you're looking at what we're doing in this project, it's really going into species. We're working with local conservation groups to protect them. What we're seeing here in Ecuador is the Yokotoco antpitta. This is a threatened bird. There is only 600 left in the population. They have a range that is limited to the Tapichalaka Reserve that we work with, and they also been name-giving to Fundación Yokotoco, which is our conservation partner in this project. And we're just going to take a moment to just listen. That is the sound that we want to protect. This is the species we want to protect. They go extinct if we don't do this. This is not a matter of, I love what I said before, we don't have the time to wait for materiality, we have to act now. But also if we're going over to Borneo, on the Indonesia side, half of the forests there are already lost to palm oil plantation. And we are there focusing on orangutan protections and other species within this setup. And listen to this. This is the work we're working with, protecting this from extinction. So how do we do it? We are working with high-quality projects. That's the core of anything we do, has to be high quality. So as you saw on the map already, by definition, we go in with the most threatened species. We're also looking at deforestation rates. We're looking at carbon sequestration. The other part is what boots on the ground can we have there? Where can we work with the local conservation partners when they're working also with indigenous groups to make sure it's science-based conservation efforts that's taking place into these efforts that we're doing? And that's all great. You say, how did you make it investable? What we're doing is we're using 1 hectare equal 1 token. So 1 hectare of tropical forest is linked to an NFT token, and it gives the investor the tradable biodiversity and carbon rights for 50-year programs. That's the asset that the investor gets in turn. And there's today priced on carbon because that's what the market is accepting, but it is really biodiversity projects, and that's the uplift in that setup as well. On the investment side, we're a mission-driven company. 85% of all the revenues coming into this goes into on-the-ground efforts. That's 85%. That's almost twice as much as most of the carbon projects out there. And we're happy to talk more about in details. But very briefly then, how do we make sure that the projects are real, that it's really achieving what we're doing? How do we measure them? How do we make them transparent? Independent data is key in that. And we work with a variable of different MRV solutions. We use satellite to look at deforestation rate and forest health. We use visual and audio. So you heard some of the audio already from the reserves. Take a look at the video up there. Does anyone in the room know what that is? It's a giant anteater. So just so everyone in the room can hear, it's a giant anteater. And actually, in this part of this forest in the West Andes, it hadn't been seen before, but you capture it on the camera traps. These are also the beauty of what technology can help us to do. And then on top of that, with the soundscapes, we're also using AI. So AI to train, to recognize the species so that investors also can start seeing what has the project delivered? Is it more there than when we started? Where are we going? Where's the population directions? And of course, transparency in annual reporting, making sure that we are accountable and showing the accountability on what's actually happening there. And that is a very short introduction to what we're doing. But as we said, we're here tonight. We're happy to talk more about it. And we are Invest Conservation.
Thank you, Anja. Welcome. And next up, I would like to welcome David Lunsford. So David is from Stream Ocean, and you are revolutionizing ocean biodiversity monitoring with AI-powered data analytics.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Yes, again, it's David Lunsford from Stream Ocean. I made it really easy on myself by inviting my colleagues to do the presentation. We made about a 3-minute video for everyone to watch. We're based in Zurich. We're a very small startup of about 6 people. As Philip alluded to, our aim is to develop the best software to recognize fish species. And now I'm going to hand it over to the virtual me, but also Florence, Ben, and Lioba to tell you a little bit more about the company. Thank you.
The EU and the US are setting policy targets to restore ocean biodiversity. This means companies will be required to monitor, quantify, and report the ocean impacts regularly.
The offshore wind industry is surging to meet ambitious energy targets. European offshore energy is expected to grow tenfold by 2050.
Coupled with the impacts of industries such as fishing, maritime, and agriculture, the oceans are confronted with a burden they cannot bear.
Traditional methods for monitoring ocean biodiversity are costly, risky, and lack scalability. With regulations approaching, the need for new monitoring solutions has never been greater.
At Stream Ocean, we've created a comprehensive monitoring solution that combines advanced camera hardware, AI-powered analytics, standardized metrics, and immersive engagement. Our solution is easy to install and low maintenance. We've designed autonomous underwater cameras that can be seamlessly connected to our cloud-based artificial intelligence.
Our AI identifies fish and extracts quantitative data from each moment of footage. An automatic assessment of the data then allows us to issue standardized metrics that determine the health of the ocean ecosystem under surveillance. This is a game-changing approach to both understanding and engaging with the underwater world. But what truly sets us apart is the power to validate our data points with high-definition imagery. We understand that seeing is believing, and this is why our solution goes beyond pure data and lets our clients experience ocean ecosystems from behind their desktop.
We deliver data and insights via Stream Ocean's online dashboard, providing a comprehensive platform for understanding, managing, and communicating ocean biodiversity health. By using our unique underwater cameras, harnessing the power of AI, our clients can improve their environmental impact and enhance their bottom line.
Monitoring the health of an ecosystem underwater is something that has been sorely lacking. And for us as a big multinational business, we can start talking about our work with the people who buy our products. So it's opening a whole new window of communication, and we're terribly excited to work with this.
We're raising funds to grow our software development team, further establish our product, reducing the installation time and improving the user experience, and expand our outreach so that more clients can use our tools to comply with upcoming regulations and win upcoming projects.
At Stream Ocean, we're on a mission to empower society to make data-driven decisions that safeguard our oceans. So join us on our journey to make a difference for our ocean and our future generations.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, so please get in touch if you have any questions. Thank you.
So that's the future where you don't have to attend the WEF anymore. So you saw the two solutions, and I would summarize it in the sense of they support you wherever you are, wherever your value chain is maybe, in making sense of everything that is out there. So there is data, you can collect it, but how do you make it useful for you as a company? With the next two companies, we're now going to look closer into circular economy solutions. I have upcoming Primal Soles, the planet's first circular shoe insoles and circular hotel slippers made from Mediterranean cork will be presented by David Avon.
Hello everyone, good evening. Thank you for having me, it's a pleasure. It's an honor to be here speaking among everybody, and thank you so much for having me. I think what I'll be talking about tonight is really how to take sustainable steps forward. And before I do that, I would like to start with a little story, as I usually do, and I'll wait until my slide is up because it kind of illustrates my story. All right, is it there? It's only one slide. No, it looks a bit better than that. Anyway, let's imagine Patagonia. So about 3 weeks ago, my brother and I, we were in Patagonia, in Argentina, and we were at a place called Refugio Jacob, which is a refuge up in the hills, and it kind of reminded me. Here we go. It's quite nice. And it kind of reminded me of how beautiful nature is and how easy it is and how interconnected we are today in this era. I mean, one generation ago, we were not able to be here one day and a few weeks later actually be here speaking on stage, which a few weeks ago I didn't think about this moment. And it's very cool to be here. But at the same time, it was also really a stark reminder of how kind of out of touch we are with nature, because it seems that as we progress as a society and as we develop and really progress, it seems like nature is the one taking the brunt end of it all. And it seems like the more mobile we get and the more we see, the less eventually there is to see. And for lack of better wording, I kind of call this the paradox of progress. And it really shows that we're out of touch with nature and something needs to change. So our systems are really flawed. And this brings me to really why I created Primal Souls 2 years ago. And it was really to live more in accordance with nature and to set an example as a daily reminder as we step into our shoes to take that responsibility with every action that we do every day. So how we do that is, I thought about how can we reach the most people, which is our first part of the slogan, which is maximum comfort. And at the same time also have a minimal footprint on the earth. So the more that we produce, actually we try to create a formula, which we did, which becomes, it's better for the planet. So we have a net nature positive solution with a net nature positive outcome. And I'll explain you more how we created that later. So with Primal, we created the world's first fully circular shoe insoles. And from that, we were very quickly propelled to the stage right here in Davos last year when we won the Financial Times Award for the Best Student Project last year. And it's funny because it was actually in this room, at the table in the back over there, where kind of in 2 minutes my whole life was changed, because it's when Jean from InTent sat me down and said that Andre was going to back our project. And within 2 minutes, actually, Barbara sat down next to me at the same table, in the same seat, and said, hey, David, you know what? I've had this idea for a long time, and I think we can actually have way more impact with this idea. And that is the new product that we've developed and that we're proud to present here this week, which is a solution to a very big problem in the industry, and that's with the single-use, synthetic, non-recyclable hotel slippers. So, Barbara, I'm very proud to announce that we have designed with our team the world's first fully circular, CO2 negative hotel slippers, and they look kind of like that. My brother over there will show you. And so we designed these, and Gina, there is a gap in demand for this in the market that we're looking to fulfill. Yeah, I heard that, and I was very happy to hear that. And we're looking to achieve two simple goals with this. And the first goal is really the direct impact that we can have as a business. And the second is the indirect impact. But let's start with the direct impact. Because this is, I mean, philosophy teaches us that really to be aware of what we control and what we don't control. Now, what we have control over is our own business. And what we're realizing here is to come with a solution that from the moment we implement it, and I'll try to say this as clear as I possibly can in these 2 minutes on stage here, is we're looking for strategic partners to join our project because we're looking to raise 2 million euros, not that much, 2 million euros, so that within the next 2 months, we can fill this gap in demand. We can supply hundreds of thousands of hotel rooms and make an impact that is immediate, it's measurable, it's reportable, and it's also monetizable because of the circular aspect. So we monetize actually the waste, and we create new products from that waste. So there's zero waste, and it's a CO2 negative solution, plus it aids the biodiversity of the cork forest ecosystem, which is one of 36 biodiversity hotspots left on our planet today. Now, it's a lot to say. I want to talk also about the limitation that we have as a business, because we talked about the UNEP report, and it's very clear. You know, it's really good that we're focusing on nature-positive solutions. Last year, nature-positive solutions grew 11% to 200 billion, which is wonderful. But at the same time, it's being pulled down by 7 trillion of nature-negative direct outcomes, and we discussed that briefly. So as long as we have that discrepancy, you know, we can double the rate of nature-positive solutions, 22% next year, and so on. But the net nature balance will still be negative. And that's the same in our industry with Primal Souls and with Primal Slippers, is that even if we prevent 1 million pairs of hotel slippers from landfill, there's still hundreds of millions that end up in landfill each year. And that's the reality, and that's the net nature balance. And we're very aware of that. And so it brings me to my last point, which is the indirect impact that we wish to have. And that's really in line with InTent and I4N. It's really to inspire the next generation of thought leaders and of entrepreneurs. And it's funny because I saw a quote of Einstein. I prepared a quote of Einstein. Last year I quoted Einstein when I said, we cannot solve problems with the same mindset that created them. And gentleman here also quoted Einstein. And it's a very tough one. You did it very good. You did it very fast. Let me think. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted necessarily counts. So this is very important, especially on the topic also, of course, biodiversity. That's a central topic here this week. It's very important. And we realized that. And so finally, to conclude everything, so Primal was really created with the philosophy to act as a daily reminder to do better in our life and to have a net nature positive balance in your own life and throughout our generation. I think that's our duty as a generation. In order to bridge this gap, we need radical, different thought leaders for radical change, immediate change. We talk about the urgency here at the SDG Tent. I think it's never been more urgent than today. We should have started yesterday because finally, ladies and gentlemen, we really believe that this is the only way to ensure long-term prosperity for all life on Earth. Thank you very much.
David from Primal Souls, thank you very much. And we're coming to the fourth solution we want to show to you today. It's last but not least, Nicolas Freudiger will share ID watches, avant-garde vision of watchmaking using circular materials that have a lower carbon footprint than the industry average.
So that was my slide. Let's see if this works. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicolas Freudiger. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of ID Genève Watches. So let me tell you for this next couple of minutes a bit more about the watchmaking industry. As we're in Switzerland, it's Switzerland's 3rd biggest industry. And did you know that also 95% of watches sold worldwide over $1,000 are Swiss made? This actually gives us, as an industry, a big responsibility. And together with my 2 co-founders, we launched ID Genève. ID Genève is not just another watch brand. It's a new definition of the luxury industry. We like to call ourselves the first luxury, impact native luxury watch brand. And we are also the first Swiss-made watch brand to be B Corp certified since last October. So we work, we harness the power and the recognition of Swiss-made watches to support climate heroes and climate solutions. How do we do that? Now I wanted to tell you a bit about this watch. So this is the first healable watch. This is a technology that was developed at EPFL in Lausanne by the company named Compare Technologies. They use 100% recycled carbon fibers with a special Heel-Tech resin. So this is really like an alien technology. That means the watch gets scratched, that gets damaged, and you can heal the piece back again just with heat under 60 seconds. So just imagine the potential of that technology, and just think about ID Genève as just being the vitrine of it, and giving more visibility to that through wearing it on your wrist. I forgot to mention, as you've seen in the first slide, our conviction is to wear, or tagline is to wear our convictions today in 2024 on our wrists. Last but not least, talking about how we can support nature-based solutions. This picture was taken last December in Miami. We had the honor to welcome Leo DiCaprio as one of our investors, not ambassador. I really want to highlight this. Of course, he wears the watch, but he stands also behind our mission. And together with him and with you tonight, we hope that it can make our mission resonate further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. And so the question for you might be, how is all of this interesting, right? If you are an investor, sure, you want to put your money there because all these solutions are hopefully going to be very successful, at least not because we are supporting them. But you also have to remember that all of these startups, they bring new materials, new technologies that might be of interest for your company or a company you work with. And this knowledge can be brought in. So we can also link you up with them and just share experience. Maybe we can, right. And so before it was mentioned that the startups are looking for partners, and so are we. So obviously, if you're a startup, you come to me. However, to achieve our mission of scaling and accelerating the 100, or hopefully more than 100 nature-positive startups, we're also looking for strategic partners as Innovate for Nature. So you will then, of course, gain access to the startups and the innovations and will help them transform your business. They will help you transform your business by avoiding and reducing negative impacts and increasing nature-positive investments overall. So if you haven't yet done it, you need to scan the QR code and it will lead you to our website, and then you have at least seen it once, and then afterwards, you will approach someone of our team outside when we're waiting for you. And with this, I want to hand over to my colleague, Sibyl Gras.
Thank you for that. So, my name is Sibyl Gras. I'm responsible for marketing and stakeholder engagement at Innovate for Nature. And I will guide you to the last part of our session today, which is our roundtable discussions. And again, Albert Einstein with his beautiful quote. And it reminds me to my youth. Perhaps you are also reminded when we looked into nature and it explained a lot to us. A bit like Pete Messerly mentioned in the beginning with this Rubik Cube. We were very curious and we were looking and finding out and trying to understand things. And yeah, where are we today? We also need to understand and find out. And yeah, now it's time to discuss around the tables. We prepared 2 questions for you. At each table, we have a host that will guide you through that exercise. In the end, the host, and in case one of the table doesn't have a host, please appoint one. This host will then collect the answers or phrase one sentence or create one word that for each question gives us an answer. We will put that again into Slido, and all of us will be informed then of what is the outcome. So please enjoy the discussions around the tables. I think you were waiting for that. Besides, you were eating, but now it's time to really discuss, and we are curious to learn more about your thoughts. And well, yeah, with that, I'll hand over to the hosts at the different tables.
Okay, so I know you're talking, and I'm sorry to interrupt your great discussions on the table, but I just want, again, your attention just for a few minutes for some closing remarks and just highlighting also some of the things that were discussed around the tables. And I hope we get more information from the table hosts. So the system change actually comes from the table, and I guess also some other tables. That's why it's so big. I think that's what needs to happen, right? Some participants at my table, at least, I felt like, oh, they are so, frustrated somehow, right? That the system is not changing, and we need to do this. But I think we need to work on all different levels, right? We need to change the systems, but we also need solutions. We need maybe also to create trust in all these areas. So I think we'll take this. We don't want to have feedback from each table. It's too late tonight. But what I'd like to do, and if I can have the last slides, from our presentation, maybe from the technicians. I'd like to introduce to you, you've met already Philip and also Sibyl, but I'd like to quickly introduce to you also Frank, and come on with me on stage, otherwise they don't see you. And just quickly, this is the Innovate for Nature team. And we look forward to hopefully collaborating with many of you in order that we can really accelerate nature-positive solutions, be it in collaboration with other partners, be it with strategic partners, be it with corporates who say, hey, we want to be part of this journey, we want to learn more about this portfolio of solutions. So don't hesitate, we are still around, contact us. We also have Jean, and I'd like to thank also InTent for giving us this space tonight for this great launch. Thank you very much, enjoy the evening, and hope to be in touch soon.
If you just go back slightly.